Welcome to the Veterinary Ledger Podcast. It's where we dive into business of veterinary medicine. So each week we are exploring new strategies, insights, stories, all that help practice owners and managers and their teams run thriving, efficient, and profitable clinics without losing sight of the pets and the people that they care for. Whether you're looking for practical tips, expert advice, or a fresh perspective on veterinary business, you have come to the right place. Although things might seem a little bit different this week because we are talking about our Relief Veterinarian webinar that we created, me and Jade and the Granite Peak team. So it's a little bit of atta girl for us, I'm going to say, because we are very proud of it. And so what we did, I would encourage you, even if you're not a relief vet, to stick around with us, right, for just a little bit, because I think that this can pertain to people with side hustles or people with kids or people that have small businesses that aren't necessarily vet med, right? I think that there's lots of uses for this information. So please stick with us. But a little bit about 1099 Unleashed. It's a great name. Love it, right? It's the Relief Veterinarian's roadmap to taxes, deductions, and business basics. So what we did here is we set you how to properly set up your relief business, what expenses relief veterinarians can actually deduct, because that is a hot topic, how to track income and expenses without making big mistakes or like big time sucks, how to make estimated payments. Well, you got to do that sometimes. And then independent contractor best practices that everybody should know, because I wanted to participate and I'm not on the tax team. So got to throw in some ops there so that Meghan can be part of the team. So thank you for joining us. This is Jade. I'm very excited to keep up with her. Jade, what do we got?
Well, I was curious, can you tell the listeners why we thought it would be a good idea to start this webinar to help relief veterinarians?
That is a fantastic question. Thank you for asking. I think that we started this, Granite Peak, we only work with private practices and we only work with practice owners. And so that's really who we're geared towards. But there's a lot of people in the vet med world that also need tax advice. And so we've got the vet med knowledge and we've got the tax knowledge. And sometimes it's a little bit more robust than those relief vets need as a private, just as a one independent contractor. And so we were finding that we were having all these prospect calls with people that really wanted to have these conversations. And it was a little bit more than we could give. And so we decided, hey, this is what we can do. We can dump all of our information, all of our knowledge into this one thing and really hit all of the boxes, check all of the boxes for people that want to do their own taxes, right? So it's a little bit of a hybrid between having a full financial team and hiring like an H&R Block contractor or clicking through TurboTax on your own. So it gives you the confidence to do it correctly. So you spend all of your time talking to veterinarians about taxes, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Fascinating. What might be the differences for somebody who is a 1099 contractor versus an associate or an owner?
As far as kind of the webinar is concerned, the main differences are probably autonomy. You've got, if you're an employee, you get a W-2, they pay your taxes, you pay the other half through your wages. They do all the behind the scenes information, getting the information to the IRS, filing forms. But when you're a relief veterinarian, you're really you're doing that on your own. You're the employer and the employee. So you have complete autonomy over your business. You make decisions of the kind of work you want to do, the kind of money you want to spend. And, as a result of that, you are kind of in charge of all of that paperwork on your end. So, you've got to get all that information over to the IRS, plus pay the taxes, for both employer and employee. So really, I think it boils down to autonomy over, your own business versus working for someone else.
And we like that? I don't know. To me, I don't want to pay all of my taxes if I can go in halvesies with somebody else.
Sure, but you have the opportunity to sort of set your own wages. Like maybe you can make more as a relief veterinarian. Maybe you are, more in demand than an employee. As a relief veterinarians, a lot of the time they are needed as a result of a shortage in a clinic. You might be able to make premium wages, and then you can set your own schedule. Maybe you only want to work 2 days a week. Maybe you just want to work a few hours a day. So you kind of have a lot of autonomy to make those decisions for yourself.
I like it. I can see that. I currently just work my work schedule.
That's true. That's true.
It's okay. I'm a slow and steady kind of girl. I like continuity, and I am definitely stick to a schedule.
I do too. Absolutely. What kind of misconceptions have you seen with relief veterinarians with 1099 work? What are you hearing when you kind of start having those conversations?
I feel like I need to talk from an ops perspective and not so much from a tax perspective, but it seems like it's kind of like the no strings attached kind of gig, right? I can bop into this clinic, I can spend a day doing vaccines, I can bob on out and go on my way. But, and I know we're going to keep talking about this, but it's running a small business. When you're a relief veterinarian, you're running your own small business. You are your small business. And so things like insurances that you didn't think about before. This is more than just your personal liability insurance, right? This is insurance that goes beyond that. Sometimes, like, do you just say yes to scheduling? I'll pick up that shift, and then you end up with 5 shifts in 1 week and 1 shift in another.
Mm-hmm.
You know, scheduling and learning how to say no, asking people for money, right? And that's not necessarily a conversation that everybody is used to, where you have to say like, hey, you haven't paid me and it's been a month and a half. Can I get my, here's my receipt. So there's all of these things that I think that go into it instead of just the freedom of not being tied down one place. Learning software systems. Oh my gosh, learning different personalities. How am I going to follow up with these notes, or what does the handoff look like? There's so many more layers that go into it when you're just in for a day and out.
Right.
That I think people think about. So like it's a lot to it. From the tax side, what is your favorite part of I have a favorite part of this webinar. What is your favorite part of this webinar?
Favorite part. I really like the beginning where we talk about kind of the business side. That was fun for me because I do taxes all day long. So, doing the TurboTax walkthrough, the spreadsheets, that felt very necessary and very useful, but kind of getting to dig into EINs and LLCs, legal protection, that type of information was fun because I don't talk about it as often as I do taxes. And I think that's probably the information most people don't know, because you go to work and then you file your taxes. It's like, no, there's a whole list of things that, that come kind of before getting that business started that can really help set you up for success in the future. So I think that was enjoyable.
P.S. I think you sound kind of nerdy when you say things.
I thought moving away from the tax was like going to sound less nerdy. Like, I don't like the tax part. I like the other part.
Wait, no, before I move on to my favorite part, I want to talk about because you go over like the difference between having a social security number and having an EIN number. Are there, and we don't want to give away the spoiler alert. Right. We don't want to give away the whole webinar, but how can people decide, like, when is it time to get an EIN number?
The answer is it sort of depends. It depends on, how much money you're making. A lot of reasons why people get EINs and eventually move to S Corp status is because they want to pay themselves wages, and then they can deduct those taxes that, they have to pay. And so there are reasons to do it. It's sort of as you move towards a certain income threshold, because otherwise it's additional paperwork, additional fees every year to keep your S corporation going. And then, even if you don't go S corp, maybe you just get your EIN and you remain an LLC. It does provide, additional legal protection. When you do that, it separates personal from business. So, at that point, you are a separate entity from yourself, and that can help you from a legal standpoint.
See, I just feel like that's so helpful already, right? You're already giving us all of this information that we might.
I'm saying too many things.
Either we're Googling it or asking ChatGPT or asking Facebook groups. And I don't know that I trust any of those necessarily for my go-to answer. So
and you'll get a lot of different answers too. You don't always get clear information.
Oh, no. But you can kind of, if you get the same 3 answers, is that the right answer?
Average them together, shakes out.
Nah. No, I will say, and this I will admit to my nerdiness, my favorite part is Jade literally goes through TurboTax and like, click here. And as a person, I have done my own taxes for years. They were easy, right? But I still would get bogged down with questions that I don't know answers to, questions that I didn't necessarily think were in English, right? Like things I had never heard of. Do I qualify? I don't know. And so
Yeah.
I found it really helpful for maybe like a computer literate person or like someone who doesn't understand tax lingo for you to explain it. Like that was super helpful to me. And I think that the people who follow along and watch the webinar will really get a lot out of that.
There are a lot of questions. As I got into it, I was like, wow, there are a lot of questions. And a lot of them you can skip, but sometimes you can't. And kind of being able to prepare for those questions and know how to answer them is, I think probably comforting because, too many questions come flying at you. It can get a little stressful. Like, I don't even know if I'm answering these correctly. Am I missing something? So I'd like to hope that, the long TurboTax chunk of this will be very helpful for people.
And do you think like can a person who I'm maybe I'm married, maybe I'm not, have an average income, have some student loans, do relief work? Can I do this on my own? At what point, like, do we say, like, you should be doing this on your own versus you should be paying somebody 4 times as much to file this for you?
I think that is a bit of a nuanced question, but TurboTax is a great platform. I do think it asks questions. It kind of gets ahead of different, tax situations. I think we hit the hardest part, making sure we get all that information in there, your income, your expenses, we hit estimated taxes, a few other deductions that are attached to your to Schedule C, but not necessarily a part of it. So I think we hit all of those things. But the other things, wages, adding dependent, other deductions, you're likely going to get prompted for a lot of that. And I think that will be helpful. It really does kind of walk you through like your life situations just to make sure you're hitting, all the possible deductions. So yeah, I think even if you're just doing a little bit of relief work, I think this is still useful, as we walk through how to get that information in while also using kind of TurboTax as a whole because of all of the other information that it prompts you for.
We are charging for the webinar because I do think that our knowledge is right. Like, I think it's a good chunk. It's also worth an hour of CE, which is exciting for some. Is that a tax write-off?
It is, yes, absolutely. It took me a second. Yes, absolutely. And that is in the webinar. If you have continuing education that you pay for, you absolutely should put it on your Schedule C. So yes.
Ding, 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 right? It's a win-win. For anybody who is on the fence, it's a win-win.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. It is absolutely a deduction. So, and that is in there. So you'll see that. What do you think some of the most common mistakes are that you see vets have when they start working independently? Like where do they kind of mess up from the onset?
I mean, and maybe it's just because I'm type A, so this might be coming from my perspective, but I think just thinking that this is like a fast and loose thing that we can just like pick up when we want. I think that there still needs to be some sort of structure, right? Maybe we're not working Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 at the same place, but like setting some boundaries and saying like Monday I'm going to do scheduling, Tuesday I'm going to do paperwork, Wednesday I'm going to have a free day, Thursday, like just so that you stay on top of things because you do need to stay organized. You need to be on your schedule. You need to know what's coming up, right? Like I would make a schedule for the next month. I'm going to say, I know this is my kid's birthday, so I don't want to work that day, right? Like, so if you know what you're available, depending on where you are, if you like send it out to people, hey, this is my availability. If you need to market yourself, if you need to do things like pay your quarterly taxes or figure out why someone hasn't paid you and try to get that balance figured out. If you need to do your CE, things like that, there's people that travel that adds a layer of complication to it. So I think thinking that we can just pick this up on the fly is going to make it feel more chaotic than if we have some sort of plan in place. And it doesn't need to be rigid and it doesn't need to be, I'm always here on Tuesdays, but it does need to be some sort of making sure that you're getting everything done that needs to be done.
I've seen where vets they work in a practice, but they also do relief vet work on the side. Would you give that same advice to them as well if they're just doing a little bit on the side?
I think so, because I don't like the whole point of it is we don't want to burn out, right? We're so burned out as an industry. And so I think that people think that relief vet is like the way to go, right? It's low commitment. To me, with my personality type, it feels way more chaotic. Like I would feel like I was always walking into a dumpster fire. And so that would like stress me out. Some people live on that though, right? Some people like to meet new people every day and have these like micro conversations and move on.
Would you give the same advice to vets working in a clinic?
Yes, I think that staying organized is important for everybody, even me sometimes.
Yes, that's fair. Mm-hmm.
I will say I am much more put together on our topics when we are on the webinar than at this current podcast today. So forgive me for that, please, dear listeners. Yeah. Yay.
You're doing great.
What do you think is the biggest takeaway? Like, what are you most proud of from putting this together? Aside from it being done during tax season, which feels like a win in itself,
We
right?
did it.
Oh my goodness.
Man, what an
Yeah.
accomplishment. I know that it can probably feel overwhelming, when you get started doing this. There's lots of information flying at you, lots of, documentation you need to have. Nobody likes taxes. I like taxes, but most people don't. Yeah, nobody wants to do this. But I think that what we've created, it's kind of work smart, not hard. Like this doesn't have to be hard. It can be simple. And it takes some time, but if you kind of set yourself up for success in the beginning, you can really get through it, from start to finish with the webinar. And then you can get back to doing what it is that you really like doing, which is taking care of animals. You don't have to, spend all your time doing this. And, there is a startup cost to it. You are going to have to start, documenting things and, set yourself up from the onset. Once you do that the very first time, I think the webinar can show you like that it can be methodical throughout the year. You don't have to stress out at the end of the year. This can be easy. So I hope that is a takeaway. Like, oh, this wasn't so bad is what I hope everyone thinks when they are finished watching it.
Watch it on repeat. I do think, though, you provide a spreadsheet, right, for tracking things because I've done it where I go back at the end of the year and I was like, scrolling through, looking for Uber receipts or
Yes.
Venmo things. And like, I get mileage on my car. I have zero clue what that is. So I think that it provides definitely some like guardrails of what we should be looking for. What is your favorite, maybe low key deduction that people miss that you think they could take advantage of?
Mileage. It's mileage. It's such a phenomenal deduction. I think in 2025, every time you drive 1 mile to get to your destination, it's 67 cents. I mean, you can imagine how quickly that adds up over the year. And I think people, they tend to forget about it or they don't document it because documentation is important. You do want to document that mileage in the event that the IRS comes knocking and wants to, show or wants you to show that you have proof of those miles. But, you can do the math, 67 cents every mile you drive. I mean, that deduction can get very large and it's most likely one of the biggest ones you're going to have on your tax return. So I think that is one that often gets ignored, but is also often the most like important and lucrative.
Okay. Mileage, I like these quarterly payments that we need to be making and also like just making sure that you're saving because now you are responsible for all of your taxes.
Right. Yes. Estimated payments. We do cover that a little bit in the webinar. They are, integral to tax success, especially paid up front. I know, sometimes it might feel nice to just ignore it till the end of the year. Don't want to do that. If you have the cash, by all means, but there are penalties and interest associated with kind of not paying that throughout the year. So that is something you would have to tackle come tax time. So
Is
something
not
to
knowing, can we
consider.
just not, is there not a box that say, we didn't know, my bad?
I wish. I've looked for it. It is not there. I thought about drawing it in, like just adding it into the return. Did not know, but it does not exist.
No one told me. No one told me. Like, that's right. That's the thing. I will say we have gotten some feedback on the webinar so far, and really people enjoyed our Southern accents, which I was like, Southern accent. I didn't even know that was a thing. And then I was like, oh, Georgia, Texas. Okay. So
I love that.
if you guys enjoyed listening to us today, hopefully you will just find this delightful on the webinar.
It probably does come out a little bit in the web. I get a little more Southern when I get nervous. So my twang might have come out in the webinar. I apologize to all the Northerners.
I think it's fun, right? It adds a bit of humanity to it. Jade, I've had so much fun doing this with you. I appreciate you being on the podcast today. I hope that
Thank you.
we have shared some nuggets with some people. So if you're watching this on YouTube, we'll have a QR code that will link to the webinar. If not, if you're listening to us, if you go to the Granite Peak CPA website under resources, it is 1099 Unleashed. Again, super clever name. Love it. We are proud of it. We're a little punchy because it's the middle of tax season. So we appreciate you getting through the end of this podcast with us. And we hope that you will share this with anybody who could use it. So if you know a relief vet who is still struggling or wants to do better or wants to make life easier, I think we kind of check all those boxes for them.
I think so.
Yay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.